Gabriella, a character for a game I'm currently developing, and this is Fields of Mistria, a game best described as Stardew Valley meets Sailor Moon. I mean, look at those aesthetics, they're gorgeous. So that got me thinking, and this comment did too, that I should try to figure out these sprites' charm. And thus, I bring you to Gabby. I'll take you step by step through my process on how I turned her from this into this. To begin, let's talk about their size. These characters are 16 wide by 32 tall, which is, I'd say, the average for character sprites. Usually when you look at, and I think I have this pulled up, yep, what I can hide and show here is, for a game like Stardew Valley, 16 tall, or 16 wide by 32 tall, right? And a game like Octopath Traveler, let me hide this guy here, you can see, also 16 wide, 32 tall. So the average size, but it looks different, completely different than something like Octopath Traveler, right? And I think one thing you could notice right away in that difference is the outline. This character has a colored outline, but if you look at Fields of... I'm gonna get that name wrong so many times, but I'm trying. Mistria, there we are. Mistria, there's a black outline, a very rough black outline. And I think that's something that adds to the charm of the game. So it's something to keep in mind. Black outline, if you want to have that more cartoonish feel, that's usually what I see when I see a black outline. It's just more cartoony. You want something more realistic, you usually go for something that's more in line with what you might see in actual life, instead of that cartoony black color. Piggybacking off of outline, let's talk about their color. You can see here, if I unhide that, color amount kind of has a range of variety. So it's not one strict set color, 16 per character. Some of it is as big as 26, and some of them are as small as 18, which I found a little bit surprising. So it's a thing of, you don't have to worry too much. I'd probably stick to around maybe 24, the average, or what would it be, the mean of the set. Another thing you can see here is if I zoom in and I grab my pen here, if I grab this guy, you might be able to notice a certain pattern as I'm going through here. You can kind of see the colors are more on the pastel side. That's when the range is more and so in this area, less in this area. Not very highly saturated colors is what I'm finding out when I'm looking at these. But every so often there's this kick of color. You can kind of say, I think it's this one here. More on this side, that pop in your face. And I think that's interesting. It mostly seems to be on the pastel side, but every so often there's that pop of color. If I slide up here, for example, you can definitely see for this character's bracelet or necklaces around the neck. You can, on here, this side is the darker color, right? And again, with this color here, more so medium, but then everything else is kind of on the left. The more so on the soft pastel-y side, which I think is super interesting. And if you just go down here, looking at the different sample sizes and colors, more on the left, pastel-y, light, and then every so often there's that kick of color there to highlight things. Next up on things I think are important to notice is the style, the pizzazz of the type of art you're looking at. In this case, I'd first bring attention to the hands. I think that really adds to the feel of the art. If you look at a game like Terraria, for example, I have the character pulled up here. This guy, look what his hands are doing. Terraria is kind of known for having this shuffle arms look when they walk around, and Fields of Mistria doesn't do that, does it? It kind of has these Lego brick arms, which I think is interesting, but something to note of in terms of style. Might be a thing of, well, I like the way it is, or I don't like the way it is, and kind of comparing and contrasting and taking what you like and what you don't like can make your style instead of a copy paste. I think it's always fun to kind of look through these and try to compare and contrast and see what you like, dislike, take what you like, leave what you don't like, and try to twist it a little bit so that it's not one-to-one. And you do this with a lot of different art styles. I might take maybe the hand style of this, then maybe I take the leg style of this, and then I've got a new style. It's my own thing. Aside from the hands, what I'd also like to point out are the legs. The legs are very prominent. Again, I bring it back to the Terraria example here. You can see in the way they face. It's different, right? This thick leg here compared to these. Now, these are thick, don't get me wrong. There's two black lines between them, or 2 pixels between them for each character that stays consistent. And there's also a full outline for it, and also at the bottom here. It's not like this, which I'm used to, but that's my style. We're trying to look at this style, so it's a thing of noting, what do I like, what do I don't like? I personally don't like this, but I like how it uses it, the game at least. Saying that, another thing to bring attention to is, here, the eyes. Look at all their eyes. There's a very particular way they do it. It is usually 2 wide by 3 tall, and they have lashes, or no lashes depending on the character. this character has, for example, the standard set, right? Standard, standard. And then this character here, this guy with the red hair, he's a little bit different. He seems to, I don't know, maybe be on the angrier side. I haven't played the game quite yet. And his eyes are a little bit tweaked, but it's not quite too different from what it was originally. Let me draw this here, and like this, and bam, you've got his eyes. So there's certain patterns and rules that seem to be followed, and keeping those in mind allows you to feel out that style. And so I try to go step by step, but that's about it in terms of what we want to notice. Lastly would be the armature. And what I like to do here, at least the last step after I've kind of dissected things and taken and looking and taken and given in terms of figuring things out, is I like to try to make an armature of the character. What I'll do is I will make this a lower opacity. I'll take a color like black, and then what I'll do is I will, and let me make a new layer. What I'll do is I'll make a I'll try to go over the character and figure out what goes where. So for example, we have the head here, right? And let me grab my pen. We have the feet here, so I'll grab the feet here. We have the hands here, so I'll grab the hands here. Then I'll go ahead and grab the pelvis, which I'd say is about here, right? That's the belt. I'll grab the pelvis, and then I grab the torso, so I might do like this for the torso to give a feel of what the character looks like, so that when I hide this, it gives me an outline for what the character can look like. And doing this, I did it for all the characters. So you have this here, and you can kind of see the armature that I made kind of turned out a little bit differently, but it follows around the same feel. It's up to you and how you want to do it. But all I did for all of these guys is I did that for every single one of them to get a feel for how the character's length are, the width sizes, and I use this as my base template for making my character in my remix. Alrighty, so now that you have your base, it's time to move on to creating your draft. That is step 2. And you can see here, if I raise up the opacity, keeping in mind our armature, I was able to create, if we slowly add the transition here, oh, interesting. Okay, hold on. It was supposed to be a surprise reveal. But you can see here, I kept in mind the armature and slowly filled in the different areas that I wanted my character to have. And this was the end result I got, as you could saw, or as you could see in the time lapse. And if we go back up here, and let me fill the scale again up here. You can see actually, let me just grab it, and it would make it easier, wouldn't it? Copy and new layer, paste. Here we are. Okay. So there's a few design details I had to modify or get rid of just because of the way the character feels. The idea behind it is that she has this overhang robe and then a bottom hang robe, and then it's got a more so of a pyramid style. So you can see here, I simplified things. Kept the overhang, kept the underhang, and I also kept in mind the black outline, since that is the style of the game you can see here. The idea is that, keep in mind the style, we're trying to stick to those rules of long legs, Lego arms, eyes like this, and I kind of broke the rules just a smidge. You can see that normally in the character's ears, they're too tall. It doesn't seem to have any here. Too tall. But my character has elf droopy ears, so I kind of gave her elf ears because I can. That is the fun part of art. And I tried to give her droopy ears, but it didn't turn out well. And I say that, and I'm trying to modify it, but it won't let me modify. Hold on. Let me modify, game. Oh, no. Well then, just use your imagination. Oh, hold on. There we are. It doesn't look the same, does it? It doesn't look as well as the other one, so I just decided to go with the classic elf ears. But it's just things like that. Once you understand the style, you can modify it, you can change it, you can tweak it. So from there, you can see I added the eye style here that we do for the normal one, and I went and I used very simple colors, and I stress this. when you're starting, you don't want to go crazy with the colors. You can see there's a lot going on here. I will explain as we go on, but for right now, just stick to the basic colors. You can see she has, what do you call it? The sleeves of her shirt. So I made that a dark purple. I made her robe a light purple, and I made her golden outlines or her golden trim gold. 3 colors. Then for her tights, instead of making them purple, because it would kind of look a little wonky, wouldn't it, if I did this? So I ended up just going with 2 colors here. A idea from this, and you can just yoink and twist, and she has black shoes. I could do red shoes too, but I went black shoes, so I just added black shoes here and kept in mind the outline. And something I have to say again is, once you know the rules, you could break the rules. Even the game itself does this constantly. And I hope I don't butcher her name. Is it Celine? Selene? This is the name. Hold on. Let me copy it, just so we're on the same page here. This is her name. Is it Celine? Selene? Celine? Maybe Selene. I will go with Selene. Selene seems right. But forgive me if it's not. It is a name that you could take a lot of different ways. Saying that, look at her sprite, and then look at everyone else's. You can see a majority of her head here, right? It's interesting. It's kind of a top-down feel compared to everyone else. Not top-down. You can see they all look like they're facing forward, don't they? The bottom of her face also kind of feels squished if I zoom out a little bit more. Wouldn't you say? It's the thing of this character, this one specifically right here, she feels out of line with everyone else. You can even see she breaks that line of, or breaks that rule of black outlining. You can see here, her head outline is not black, right? We have black outline here, black outline here. For everyone else, but her, nah, she doesn't get one. She gets a brown one. So it's a thing of give and take. What do you want to take from the style? What do you want to modify? It's a thing of push and pull. What do you want to do? And I realized later on, as you'll see, the reason why she's probably a little bit different because of the hairstyle they went for, and it probably looked a little wonky without doing this kind of modified sprite look. But for now, we're going to do something that's more akin to this, which is straightforward. I keep things very simple, you can see. Straightforward look. I add the details. Well, don't add any details. I add the feel of the outfit, the style. Everyone kind of has a staircase arm pattern, so I keep to that. Staircase. She doesn't. Again, she's breaking the rules, but this lady also doesn't, so it kind of, kind of measures out. But you can see here as well, because of the style of clothing she has, it's puffy. So it's just whatever clothing you feel like kind of works out. This guy has different buff arms, so it's a little different in that case as well. Just a sort of feel thing. But I ended up concluding with this since I think it best feels out the feel of the character in her clothing. You can see here what I can try to do as well, and if you saw in the time lapse, I tried to mess around with the feel of the styling. I tried to think about, okay, well maybe it can go overhang. Maybe it can overhang a little bit, right? Maybe like this, but then it kind of looks like shoulder pads, doesn't it? Looks a little wonky. But that's the thing of whatever you think looks nice. I don't think this looks nice as much as the other one, but it's that thing of try a lot of stuff. Try a lot of and see what you like. And let me go back here. So I tried to keep her frame on the more slender side. I just kept things as simple as possible. I didn't try to add a lot of detail because I think a lot of it can be implied, especially when you're looking at the sprite from this very far distance. Taking in the example of keeping things simple, how I think her outfit might look if it were simplified would be like this. And you can see here, right, that dress, the belt, the over part of the dress, the under part of the dress. No shading whatsoever. Just make sure to keep in mind when you're trying to do that base draft, what's important? What are the shapes that you're going for? Do you want a dress to be longer, shorter? Do you want the shirt to be longer or shorter? Try to keep that in mind and only focus right now on that clothing, because next up is the hair, which we will touch on. you have the sketch of the clothing done, you move on to the sketch or the rough draft of the hair. And you can see I ended up doing this one after the time lapse, but I went back and modified the hair and gave it this look instead. Neither one's correct. It kind of just comes down to how you feel. In my case, for my character, she has very long hair, and you can see as well, very wide hair. And I feel like trying to keep it 1-to-1 and adding a lot of hair out here wouldn't be quite the style of the game. I wanted to keep things contained and refined. You can see here, it kind of comes out a little bit, but just ever so slightly compared to mountains of hair on this side. So it's a thing of, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to do a style or trying to do something else? Had I moved away from the style, maybe I would have tried to go outbound, but I tried to keep things more contained because I'm trying to feel that sense. So the idea behind it now is that you take 4 colors, only 4 to 5. I would stick with 4. You do a main color for the hair. You would do this guy here, main color. You do a light color for the highlight. Then you do a dark color and a darker color. So only stick to 4. You only need 4. That seems to be the case in terms of styling. You can see here, this character is a bit of an exception. She has 5. She has her main hair color, right? That color, or this color. She has her dark hair color. She has her darker hair color. So this guy right here. Then she has her, where are we at? Light hair color. And then there's one more here I'm not catching. Let's say where are we at? Oh, highlight. There we are. Highlight. There's 5 here. If we move on to this character here, we have the main hair color. We have the highlight. We have the dark. We have the darker. 4. But this character, I believe it's 3. We have the main because there's no highlight. We have the main. We have the dark. We have the darker. For this guy, it's 4 because he has that highlight. So the main color, a highlight color, we have the dark color, and then the darker color. Oh, darker color, hold on. This guy right here. So it kind of depends on this guy. He gets 3 colors because, again, not a lot of hair, but also just no highlight. Oh, undo. There we are. So it's just things to keep in mind. Stick to 4 colors. I think that's the best bet, but in case you need it, do 5. Do whatever you feel like. It's that thing of, I'm trying to keep the essence of, but trying to also keep my own feel in it as I go along. Saying that, something also to note is that the hair that outlines the character's face also tends to be the dark color. So it would be this color here, or hold on, let me get a bit of a darker color. This one here would be the dark. This one here would be the dark, and you can see this dark color is outlining the face. This dark color is outlining the face. The same for here, or not this one. This one has 3, so it gets a bit of an exception. But you can see some parts are lighter than others, so to think of style. You can see here, this guy's also a bit of an exception, and I think I know why. When we go over styling the hair in detail, well, not styling, detailing the hair, I'll go in a little bit more depth. But it's interesting to note that his hair is dark. That outlines it, the darker one of the 2. And this guy, can't really explain that one. It just seems to be 4 pixels for the hair. And then he also has eyebrows. I don't think anyone else has eyebrows. That's interesting to note at the very least. So I do that for my character here. You can see I make sure that she has that dark outline for her hair. And for the bangs, what I do is, if I go back and we go back over here, it was a little tricky since my character does have long bangs, but it's hard to do in this style. So I stuck to just having a single strand of hair for the bangs. And you can see here, if we go back, just a single strand. I'm just trying to get the feel of it down. I'm not trying to get down the details. I'm sticking to not even the 4 colors, the 3 colors. I have that boundary, I have the main color, and I have the back color. And then what I did to modify it a little bit is that I went back and I added more hair in the background. You can see here. And I also curled in the hair since the actual sprite is curly. So it's the thing of modify it a little bit, but try to keep that same idea. And it's that thing of keeping it simple in this state allows you to do a lot of modifications. For example, maybe you don't want the character to have long hair. What I could do is, and let me erase this guy. Oh, wrong layer. Where are we at? This layer right here. What I can do is, hey, maybe we want like this, right? Maybe we want to add some space buns. So what I can do is I can grab this guy here, like that. And it's a little too pointy. So we can do that. And then because it's the back hair, we can fill this in. Oh, fill this in here. And now look, it's space buns. And maybe you think to yourself, okay, this hair's a little bit too wavy. Alrighty. Well, then to modify that, we would just make this hair very long. And it's a modification, or maybe you want to poof in the back, right? What I could do is possibly do poof in the back like this, maybe even like that, and then just add in that background. It's a thing of, because the styling's so simple in this state especially, it allows you to play around with the shapes and figure out what you like, what you dislike, figure out what you need and what you don't need. And I think that's the fun of it, especially in this state. I said state before, but just overall, what styling are you looking for? This is the part where you get to mess around with the shapes before anything's concrete, and that's what I really like about it. It's a thing of, maybe I want the not to be rounded as much, so maybe what I'll do is I'll do like this and like that. Kind of gives her a different style. It's that thing of, it kind of looks now like she has a rounder robe, doesn't it? Like more of maybe a tutu. Maybe we can round it out a little bit here. So you can just mess around with the styles. I went for a more angled version, but the thing is just trial and error, figuring out what you like, figuring out what you dislike. The best part about Pixelart is just those small tweaks can really change the character a lot. But with that said, let's move on to clothing detail. Alrighty, so for this step, I can definitely say it was probably the hardest for me. I always struggle with clothing and hair, so it was a bit of a challenge, but that's also why I like doing these studies. You can see here, even when I do my own, it's not too detailed, and then you look at something like this, where it's kind of all being thrown at your face, and it's a lot, and it looks nice, but then you have to wonder, what's going on? How do I do this? How do I replicate this? So I'm going to try to take you through that process. Quickly go over this one and then break down what's happening over here so you can kind of compare and contrast and try to get a feel for the method. That way you can both apply it to your own stuff in the future and just understand, comprehend, attempt at the very least, as I kind of get what's going on now, and that helps in the fact that going into the future, I'll be able to replicate that sense of what's going on. I can take that math. It's like figuring out a formula to a math equation and then being able to reapply it. So we'll start off easy. We'll first talk about the skin. Skin's not too difficult. What's going on here for the skin and why it looks the way it does is because this skin is rounded, and they're trying to give off a feel of it looking like it has a lot of dimensions. You can see there's this flat part here at the front. You start off with one color, and then from there, oh, hold on, let me grab my pen. Then from there, what you have is you have the second color, and then you have a third color, and then sometimes a fourth color, depending on the color of the face. You can see here, one color. For this lady, it seems to be 4 again, 1, 2, 3, 4. For this one, it's 1, 2, 3. If you don't count that last one, 4. And then for this one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So it seems to be about 4. So that's what I did here. I started with one simple tone here, right? Then I took another tone, and you can see as well, if we go back to, hold up, scroll back up here, there's 2 tones here. You have your regular skin tone, right? That normal color. Then you'll have your darker, and then there's this darkest. For this one as well, you can see normal, there's a dark, there's a darker. You might call this one the darkest. For this lady here, normal, we have dark, darker, darkest. And for these highlights, there seems to be 2 tones depending on what you're looking at. This guy doesn't have any. Maybe it's because of his hairstyle, but he seems to follow that pattern as well. So that's what I did down here. I went for a normal tone, right? That's the center part there. And then I went for a darker tone. So that goes there, and then these go here. And then I went for a dark. I'm just trying to overall outline the face. So dark. And then I went for the darkest at the corners. Oops. The darkest, and that gives that face, or the idea is that it's supposed to give a feeling of roundness when you zoom out. And I think it's interesting. You can see on my character design, I don't do that, but I might try that in the future. You can see I have a little bit shading at the top, but it's just interesting. I always think it's a thing of, wow, that's why they do that thing. And I definitely do see the feel of it, and I might try to incorporate it into a future design, trying to keep in mind that round feeling for the frame of the face. Next up, clothing. Aren't you excited? Again, remember just that normal, darkest. What I did here was I kept things super simple because of just how this character design is. There's not too much to it. It's just a robe with a kind of light color and dark color, and then a little bit of shininess on the edges. So all I did was I took the yellows from here as a base of reference. So I grabbed this color. So we have now 2 colors for this one. We have the 2 colors for purple, and then we have a third purple, I believe. Yep, third purple. So I just added in 1 additional color. And from there, what I'm trying to do is keep in mind the lighting. Where's the light touching on this character outfit? You might say, okay, it's not touching the shoulders, and let me go ahead and grab, where are we at? Here, there we are. You might say, and let me slide this over just a little bit more. Okay, the lighting isn't touching on the shoulders. So let's go ahead and blot out the shoulders. Lighting isn't touching below the, what would you call it, the robe, right? Might say here, you could even call it here in these corners. Might even say these corners, you could do that corner. You could do this corner. It really is all up to you. Then what I did is I went around the edges and I also did that here, kind of around the edges to give off that shimmery feeling. And I also just added that there. This one is super simple just because of the style I'm going for. My character in general is just on the simpler side. So since we can't really do since we're doing simplicity, let's talk about this lady. I bet you're surprised to see how much this is, but remember, we're just keeping in what we just did and going from there. It is basically the same technique as this, but just a little bit tweaked. Not too much of a pain, I assure you. I was surprised. So to begin, and let me go ahead and grab this guy. Remember, if we keep in mind the colors, what are we saying? We have the normal tone, right? We have that darker tone, or dark tone, and then we have that darker tone. 3 colors. Are there any other colors? I don't believe so. So 3 colors for that one. And then for the cloth bit here, we have the normal tone, we have the dark tone, and then we have the darker tone. So again, 3 colors. That's what I did here. 3 colors for the purple and 2 colors for the gold. Can't really do 3 colors. I probably could if I really tried, but again, I tried to keep it on the simpler side. But there's really only 3 colors going on here. From there, what you have to figure out is the shading. What are we trying to do? Where are the darker sides? Let's start again with this dark tone here. You can see they tried to go for a rounding feel like with the face, where you have on the outer edges is the dark part, right? And the center is the lightest. So the darker part here goes for the, and hold on, let me make sure the centerpiece is there. You might put a darker part there because it's at the bottom, right? And then for here, because around the arm, it's trying to wrap around, that's the darker part. So that's why those are there. From there, we have the less dark tone. I always try to go from darkest to lighter. So from here, they add in just extra edges, and I think this definitely is just up to interpretation of how they do it. I might do it differently depending on the day, the day of the week. So it's that thing of trying to figure out why, and then just going into the future, adding that to your thought process. You can see here in the sleeve of the shirt, right? Because it's rounding around, that's probably why there's that darker tone here, but this darkest tone outside there. Then from here, because of the shoulders, there might be a dent in there, and you kind of see where this is going. It's not as painful when you slowly break it down, at least it is for me. I hope I was able to explain it to my best ability. Then from there, we have the same thing for this cloth bit here, right? We have the really dark tone that's down here. Down here, we're trying to highlight the very dark tones. Then from there, we just take the lighter of the dark tones, so your normal, dark, darker, let's say dark. And then from there, we have dark and dark. Then you also might say, dark here too. You could do dark here. It depends on the person, but I like how they do this kind of U shape, because I think it adds to a sort of curved feeling, like it's like a poofy bit that kind of comes out. I don't know how to best describe it. Kind of a poofy bit that comes out with the other edges kind of being dark, and then you kind of have this as the light tone. So that's what this feels like instead of if you did this like this. That's why I feel like they did that instead. And then from there, you can see, again, with the belt, same thing, right? We have this one color, the darkest color, we have the normal color, and then we have the dark color. And it's like the round edges, so we have this guy here for the outside, and then this guy here for the inside to make it look round. And that is that. That is the gist of the clothing idea. And it can be applied to this one or this one. You just have to think about where's your shading going. What are you trying to accomplish? For example, even here, you can see I could take apart this and you have the front part of this kind of roby dress and the back part. And then you kind of add that dark dot to add emphasis on the really dark shadow. It's that idea of what are you trying to draw attention to? Especially when I zoom out, it adds a lot of detail, doesn't it? If I undo this, not as much, then bam, you get hit with that detail. I think it's really neat. So it's just a matter of breaking these down into chewable pieces. That's the best way I can explain it. From there, we move on to the last part, which is refining and adding the hair. And maybe even harder than the clothing, but we'll try. We'll go bit by bit. Alrighty, you should be almost there. Character should be either... Your character should be looking like one of the guys on the right. You've got the face done, you've got the clothing done, but the hair looks not so done. So that's what we're doing now. You can kind of see it went from this to this for my character, and there's a few reasons why, and I'll go step by step explaining. The thing is, I could not get the highlights on the hair. Let me grab my pen. I struggled to get the highlights on the hair figured out here. So I ended up doing it like this character you can see here so that I could add the highlights. One character here is facing kind of down. You've got that downward look and the frontward look. I think both work. You can see as well. He has a neck. She doesn't have a neck. So again, it just turns to the thing of style in terms of figuring out what you want to do, what you don't want to do. I think both work. But because I wanted to show the part in her hair, I decided instead to go for the longer head, and I kind of squished her down and moved her up and moved things around a little bit. So I went from this to this in terms of coloring. So in terms of that is why it went from this to this. Because I've realized that's probably what happened here is the top of the head needed to be added, but you didn't want to give them an alien head. So instead you went with something else, and I like this. I think this works. I like this as well, but again, I didn't have enough space to work with, and if I go ahead and just kind of bump this guy up a bit, you can kind of see that's the height, right, of the hair. If I do this, it looks silly, doesn't it? So you modify the face position so it doesn't look as alien head. That's why that is done, I believe. That's the reason why, at least that's what I'm gonna assume, and that's what I'm gonna use moving forward. So saying all that, let's break down these guys. Let's start with this guy here. I think he's kind of the easiest to explain. Let me zoom out a little bit. As before we talked about, he had the 4 colors. He had the normal, he had the highlight, the dark, and the darker. Now, why I think he has the, the darker outline instead of having this guy, the dark outline. So instead of this guy here, why I think that's the case is because you can see this is touching this. So you couldn't really do dark, right? Dark outlining this, and then that doesn't look right. So instead they have the darkest on the outline to keep things even, to keep things feeling like they should, compared to this where the darkest doesn't touch the outline. That would be like if this touched this, which wouldn't make sense. So unless it touched the outline, you wouldn't need it. And saying that, how you should look at his hair is that it's in kind of 4 sections. If I make a new layer here, if I make a new layer here really quickly and just do a bright color, we've got like a section here. We've got like a section, hold on. Got a section here, kind of for hair. Oh, undo. Section here. We have another section like here. Oh, like this. So another blobby guy here. And then lastly for our hair, we have another section. Well, it's red, so it kind of works out. Another section here. And trying to keep this in mind, there we go. Trying to keep this in mind, I think helps in terms of figuring out where you want your shading to go, because we have these kind of different, I want to call them frops, but flops of hair. Let me go ahead and hide that guy. Because we have those different sections, and I'll move this guy down here as well, just so you can see it here in terms of where they go. Even here, if you go down here, she has the bang, the back, and the front. So this one would be more or less, this is the back, this is the back. Imagine that as all the back. You have, this is one section as the front, and then you have, this is the very far back as the last section. So making sure things are in sections is also very handy, depending on the style of hair you're going for, how complicated it is. Thankfully, mine isn't too complicated. We have the one section here, right? One section up top, one section in the back. So it's not too painful, thankfully. But if you're going for more of a short hairstyle, it might be. And from there, once you have that feel, right, next up what you want to do is shading. Like with the clothing, like with the skin, we want to go back to where does shading lie. And if you look at this and try to break it down, you can realize, oh, this makes sense in terms of shading. For example, if we're looking at that area up there and I grab the darker tone, right, that up there, if we're trying to section up this guy, might do like this, maybe even like that. Kind of looks a little wonky, but let's try to do kind of, well, let's start off with the dark. I think the darkest might work a little bit better. Sectioning off where the darker tones or darkest tones, right? Darkest tones in the hair, where do they go? And something to note as well is the outline of this bit here. It seems to be, there's also an outline here, which is nice and neat, and I really do like it. What I'm gonna do is, there's dark bit here because you have the shading kind of here, right? So you might have that guy kind of pop out a little bit. Kind of looks like spiky fragments now if I do like this, right? Looks a little bit different. And I think, especially by keeping that spacing there, it lets you know where it leaves parts. It leaves parts to the imagination. I think that's why it works. We have that base here, and it's kind of, this bit here is kind of like this bit at the belt, where you have the darker edges on the side, and then the lighter part in the middle. And then we have, this is the darkest edges, this is the darker edge, and that one. I believe that's all the ones that are the darkest. Then we have darker, right? So we go ahead and have that. This is darker, this would also be the darker. And now we have the bottom guy here. That's why this isn't the darkest, it's the darker, because it lets us outline things a little bit easier. And now we can kind of move in that separation, add to those bits. You can kind of see where those bits are being created, right? We have this that's outlining the top, showing off the variation and the change in height in the hair and the shading. And here we can kind of have this up here, and it just shows off the base of the hair. And then from there, we have the highlights. Now, to note, this lady has white highlights, he has kind of tinted highlights, and that's what I decided to do for mine, is I went for more of a, not exactly white, more so of a tinted. So he has the tinted highlights, and he kind of just fill them around a little bit. I definitely think it's up to interpretation in terms of where the highlights go. You can kind of do might do like this. I like going for this kind of lightning pattern. That's one of my favorites. We'll go ahead and do lightning pattern. And then we have a bit up there as well. So a little bit here, a little bit there. And that's about that for his hair in terms of breaking it down. We can kind of apply the same method here, right? So to start off, let's do the darkest color here, or can't really do that just because of her face. Let's get rid of that guy. That guy's not really needed. And let me also merge this guy down just so we can see it. But for this one here, we have the darkest, which is this tone. And, I said that tone. I think I might have the wrong tone here. Nope. This separates it. Gaia. Okay. In that case, this would be our dark tone. And from there, like with the top of his head, right, we kind of have that edging that has the rounding. Because we're only using these colors for the hair, we don't have that darkest tone or that tone that steps up from here. Or, no way, hold on. Nope. You can kind of see those corners, right? For this corner, we had that second tone that goes up. Here we have this tone, right? That tone, and that tone goes up. So because this tone doesn't have that tone in between, we just go for, or here, that tone in between these two, we just do this tone, which is why there's no extra color there. We do the edges like that, which makes sense, right? Edges like that because it's kind of going rounded. From there, these are also edges that are being rounded as well, right? And I definitely think it's interesting for this bit here. Now, she has bangs, and highlighting bangs is really neat, I think, at least, in terms of just simple dots. Just simple dots for the bangs. How I do my bangs is a little bit differently because I don't really have bangs, but it's up to interpretation again, because you can see here between the eyes and the bangs. It's that thing of, what do I want my character to look like? Do I want to add extra bangs, or do I want to make them longer, shorter? Just a lot of trial and error, I'd say. And from there, we kind of have that bit at top, right? And then we have this around the edges. So we have, again, the edges here. And then we have that dark bit that has around the edges. And that about does it for, oh, hold on. Kind of have bits down to there. And then bits down there in terms of shading, which makes a lot of sense in my opinion. And then from there, you can kind of see that hair. Now it's interesting to note how the shading is just kind of a blob, right? It's not, or I guess it's more of a blob in the sense of how some hairs on top you can kind of see have a halo bit. I might try to put it on screen somewhere if I can find a reference, but for some animes, the halo highlight bit is just a circle because you're seeing it from the top. I'm guessing that's what it is. You can see originally my hair shading, if I can find it here. Let's see. I don't know if I can. Oh, I definitely can. I remember. We go down here. Originally, the hair shading was like this, and I changed it to look like this because it's more of that circle, right? I wanted to not fight against the curvature of the hair. This one, the lighting was wrapping around like this. But realistically, the hair is probably gonna wrap around like this. So that's why I changed the highlights, and I definitely do like it a lot better. There's also the idea that sometimes you wanna part it up. You could add like, maybe like that, so it's not as much of a band, but it just kind of, again, depends on how you wanna do it in styling. There doesn't seem to be too much of a strict style when it comes to hair. You can see sometimes it's just a dot here, dot there to show where that style is, and I always think that's pretty neat. So saying that, where do we go from here? Again, we have that darker tone, right? So this would be where it's getting shaded at, and oh, hold on. We need that symmetry tool back. Where'd the symmetry tool go? Where'd it go? Oh, it's way off. I can't believe I haven't been using the symmetry tool this entire time. We can go ahead and drag this guy here, and we have where the darker bits on the hair. We can go ahead and do this here, because it's the shading, right? Then we have maybe, well, all of this gets dark, right? Because this is the darker parts, and you can kind of see as well the strands. So what I can do here is I can start off like this, where this is the darker edges, right? And then I can kind of lighten it up by grabbing the next step up. And then instead of it all being that color, you might decide to do that instead. So it's sparingly the darkest, you're moving to the darker. Then from there, you can kind of darken the tones or darken the corners of that. That's why that exists. And that about does it in terms of, oh, we can kind of see there, not about there, in terms of why things are the way they are. There we are. And I take that in my style, what I do in trying to understand it. You can see here, darker edges here, right? Lighter edges outside, darker bits here. I have a parting in here, so it's darker. I try to keep the darkest on the edges here. And I just overall try to keep that feel. And again, you can see initially it was this, but I end up changing it to being round like this. I think that fits it a little bit better. But it's a thing again of just figuring out what you like, figuring out what you dislike, taking what you like and taking what you don't like. I don't think there's any clear strict rules. You can see here, they kind of break them. One has white highlights, one doesn't have white highlights. Just a thing of preference. But overall, that is the style of Fields of Mistria. Mistria. There we go. Fields of Mistria. And I'll bring you back over to the next screen. Thank you for watching this video to the end, and I hope you found it helpful. This is the first time I've done a format like this, so if you'd like to see more, please let me know in the comments below. And while you're there, feel free to also leave suggestions for what topics you'd like me to cover. If you didn't know, I live stream on both here and Twitch from Friday to Sunday. We do weekly studies much like this one, so if that caught your interest, consider checking it out. Likewise, if you'd like more resources to study from, consider checking out my Patreon. Speaking of, thank you to my Patreon members Archie Nibs, Colonel, Emilio Pichardo, Kiwi the Dork, and Skibidino. That'll be it from me though. I hope to catch you all sometime soon. Bye-bye.